Good morning. This is Jenny Ray LaRue and my colleague Namaan on Market Outsiders. And today is Monday, September 15th. And we're really excited to be with you today. We have a fun news article. We haven't done one in the last week or so. And we're going to kind of go through what the decision-making process might have been around this. Sometimes corporate decision-making can seem like people reading the reading the tea leaves. It's not. Not usually. Sometimes it can be, but it's not usually. And this one, I wanted to kind of back out for you what I think the conversation was behind the scenes before they released it. So I'm looking forward to diving into it. Naman, how was your weekend? And welcome.
Thanks so much, Jenny Ray. My weekend was great. Lots of family time and hanging out at home, which probably like to 10 years ago me would have sounded really boring. But now I'm like a weekend at home where we just get to hang out, like that's like gold. So I'm feeling refreshed and recharged for the week. Hopefully you can say the same.
I can totally say the same. Yeah, we had a great weekend. This was the kickoff weekend of cross country and soccer, which, by the way, we should totally do an episode on like the economics of youth sports. I think it would
Did
be
you know
really,
youth
really
sports are a $40 billion industry in America?
I did not know that. It's a little terrifying that you knew that without looking anything up. I want to know how you knew that, but also I'm super not surprised. And there's a new league in town in our community because the other leagues all filled up, and this is at like the 6-year-old level. And so I'm like pretty fascinated by the growth of youth sports. A lot of the costs are fixed for youth sports, and there are a few that are variable. And I think it would be just like an interesting way to kind of break down, hey, if you were going to start the next like $1 billion sports business inside youth sports, like what would that look like? So yeah, I think it would be fun to talk about. But yeah, I didn't know it was a $40 billion industry. But everybody, let's go. By next week, I want some startup ideas. This is not an industry that AI can do a lot for. Right. There is a little bit of AI, but I'm also particularly interested in talking right now about non-AI businesses because AI is getting all of the attention. What that means is that there are capital opportunities for acquisitions and growth that are going to be smaller than AI. So a lot of like VC money isn't going to flow to these places, but they are major coupon clipping opportunities to build pretty significant hedges around, and then using AI to operate them can really help with efficiency. So before we get off on a tangent, there's our tangent for today. How's that sound?
Okay. Hey, well, I'm game. No pun intended.
Pun superintended. Also, what is the first, what, just to wrap this up, what's the first youth sport that you think your daughter's going to play? Like the first
Oh,
youth sport is not really her choice, right? It's
it's
mostly
not.
the
I mean,
parents'
it's
choice.
probably going to end up being soccer. I mean, she really likes kicking me, so if I can channel that towards kicking a ball, I'm like, that's a win, right? So I'm thinking it's going to be soccer.
I love that. If you guys think that Naman is smart and headstrong, his daughter is like a 5x version of this. So yeah. So here we go. Let's talk today about a article that I saw. And like I said, we haven't really kind of done one for a little while. So here's the tag, right? Ram cancels plans for all electric pickup truck. And this caught my attention because I own a Tesla. I bought a Tesla in 2022. In 2022, kind of on what I would consider to be like one of the peak points of the electric vehicle craze. I'm super interested. I've talked occasionally here about some of the challenges of owning a Tesla. One of the biggest ones is that when I open the app, they built a part of the app that says, here's how much money you've saved owning a Tesla. And living in California, that number is actually inverse. So it actually says, here's how much more you've spent owning a Tesla. It's probably one of the only places on earth where you see that number. I know my friends in Georgia and North Carolina and other places do not have that same experience, probably Texas, Naman. But anyhow, this one caught my attention because I don't know that I ever really thought that all electric pickup trucks would work. Our other car, so my husband's car is a pickup truck. We buy and own rental properties. We have a winery. We have a power plant. Right? Our other investment portfolios are very kind of pickup truck necessary. Just one fun aside for that, we did actually use a Honda Accord, one of the 1990 1996 model, so like the one that is even smaller than today's Civic, to remodel our first 5 houses. And people would stand there at Home Depot watching my husband load like a dishwasher onto the back of this Honda, just with astounding glee, right? Because there was nothing built for actually like remodeling with the Honda. It was an incredibly effective vehicle to move as much as we possibly could. But now we're like pickup truck trailer people. We haul stuff, we move stuff, and this idea of an all electric pickup truck just to me has never seemed like it would be powerful enough to do what we wanted to do, or have the durability and the range to complete an entire day doing everything that we needed to do, because pickup trucks naturally are pretty power hungry, but also like we use them all day long on the jobs. And so anyhow, I was really interested in looking into this. Any first thoughts before we dive into the numbers?
Well, your first two thoughts were what I was going to say, so I won't repeat it for the sake of our listeners. But it was just, are they going to be powerful enough, and then are they going to be long lasting enough? Were my two big questions, and my hypothesis would have been no. We have not had market outsiders for more than a year, but like years ago I was saying, so nobody can prove that I'm right, so you'll have to trust me on this, but years ago I was saying, like, I thought the future was hybrid before it was electric. And so the only
Or
brand that
maybe
I saw,
always hybrid, I would, by the way, argue. I'm
potentially, the only
mhm.
brand that I saw making that bet was Toyota. And now you're seeing, when you look at kind of valuations, when you look at like performance of these auto companies, Toyota is pulling ahead because they doubled down on hybrid, which I just think is the more accessible next step for a lot of people. And it's also what like our current infrastructure in the United States can support. Like, we do not have the national charging infrastructure we need to like go fully electric by 2035 or whatever kind of the goal was. And so, I think the infrastructure problem affects all kinds of electric cars. And I would have thought that pickup trucks would have been the last place that you would want to electrify for some of the reasons we've already mentioned. So this isn't a surprise to me, not at least initially.
Well, let me just tell you why I thought it was interesting, because I always like to challenge my own assumptions. I'm in Orange County. Orange County is the headquarters of Rivian. And Rivian is, as far as I know, the only all electric pickup truck that is on the market today. And I see a lot of Rivians around here. And so, Orange County also, there's a Tesla every other car. It seems like on my street alone, there's a Tesla in every other driveway, or maybe every driveway. And so we're the kind of place where you would have a bias toward this thing. But it's also very, very interesting when you're looking at this. If you see, they made a bet on it. They actually released it in 2023. What changed since then? And Namaan, one of the key points right here at the top of the article that I just want to highlight is one of the spoilers, is that Ram said it would still plan to launch an extended range electric truck, which is equipped with an electric generator and a gas engine. What does that sound like to you?
Sounds like a hybrid to me.
So one of the things that I thought was really important, and this mattered to me when I was at Bain doing market research, is like, what do we actually call an electric vehicle? Right? Because if that's called an electric truck, then it's a hybrid and electric truck, or is it a gas powered vehicle? And you're going to actually find that different companies classify that differently. And therefore, when you're looking at a market research report, you have to really get into the weeds to understand, when we say the market for electric vehicles, does it include hybrids or not? And, an electric vehicle like that, the one that they're talking about, does not require any charging infrastructure. You can plug it in at home, sure, to like boost your mileage or your MPGs, but it basically doesn't require any charging infrastructure. And I would absolutely agree with you. I think that the hassle of like finding a supercharger, I had to go a mile and a half out of my way yesterday, which wasn't significant, not like being on the I-5 trying to get back to Northern California, and having like 50 miles to go with 20 miles in the car. But there were challenges for sure. So that was the one thing, right? They're no longer developing the full-size electric Ram 1500 pickup truck. It was supposed to release either later this year or next year. So I'm canceling or pausing that development has costs to it. I think that's also interesting.
It
And then
does.
it says here, and this is one of the things I want to pressure test, the auto industry has been dealing with slower than expected consumer interest in electric vehicles. So, by the way, electric vehicle growth is still there. This is not a declining industry. So, you have to really understand the nuance. Like when we're at business schools and people say the market is declining, I'm like, okay, is the market growth declining or is the market declining? Those two things are very different
Very
because if the
different.
market growth is declining, it just means that it's not what you expected it to be or it's not what it was yesterday. That's actually normal in a lot of curves to see early strong demand and then declining growth in demand. What you're really worried about is declining market interest.
I will say, I
And
think that
that,
it's a bigger. I'm sorry,
yeah,
finish your thought.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna
I was probably going
say,
to say the same thing as you.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's a bigger issue though in the automotive industry because you have to plan for these capital investments so far ahead of time. So the
Absolutely.
forecasting becomes so much more important. Like we talked about shower heads last week. Like you could pivot much faster in the shower head business than you can in like the automotive business because you've got to plan these production lines, these factories, even the marketing campaigns. You've got to prepare your dealer networks years ahead of time. And so by the time you actually get to full production, the demand has shifted. And if you are on the wrong side of that bet, well, then now you've just set your business back potentially 3 to 5 years. And so I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of these automakers right now, where they made a lot of these investments and a lot of these, um, they set in motion a lot of these strategic plans 4 years ago at like peak froth for the EV market. Like there were tax credits everywhere. It seemed like the demand curve was never going to plateau. And then you get to like 3 or 4 years down the line when these investments are coming online, all of a sudden the world looks completely different. And these guys are kind of they're caught with their pants down and the tide's coming in.
Yeah. Well, and here's one thing to just build on that, Naman. I think that's actually one of the innovations about Tesla that people have never acknowledged to its fullest. Is that for most people, the minute that you buy a Tesla, after that is when that Tesla goes into production. That's remarkable flexibility compared to a 4-year in advance cycle. That doesn't mean that we're able to change the design of the Tesla. It just means that the efficiency in the supply chain, the lack of inventory held on lots, and the matching of consumer demand with what's happening now, like that means that I at Tesla in probably under a week, maybe even in hours, can flip my production if all of a sudden Cybertrucks are what people want on a Tuesday. And that flipping of the production, it gives me that kind of rapid flexibility. And also, I don't have to hold not just the inventory, the finished inventory, but all of the pieces that go into creating a Tesla. I don't have to hold that in inventory. So my ability to deploy capital is so much more efficient when somebody pays me first, and then I can put the car into
Yeah,
production. And I think like that's, the real novelty or the real innovation of Tesla even more than product.
I
That's
think
that's my
so. And I
personal.
think I agree with that 100%. And I think the secondary innovation there is they went direct to consumer. So you don't have a network of
Absolutely.
dealers you have to keep happy. And so you not only own the end-to-end customer experience, but there are no other stakeholders you have to consult with to make those kinds of fast decisions. And so the model that they've employed enables that kind of flexibility you're talking about, and it's a huge competitive advantage.
I'm not going to say that going direct to consumer in every situation is great, but I'll tell you what, we just put a new air conditioner into the winery. My husband is able to install an air conditioner. He knows how to run the ducting for an air conditioner. And you know what you can't do in the United States of America? You cannot buy an air conditioner if you are not an HVAC professional. Like the dealer network is so locked down there. And it helped me understand. One of my friends in business school talked about how one of the major trades he made in his first year after B school was into HVAC. And I was kind of like, okay, it seems like an interesting industry. I'm not sure what's going on, but the lockdown of the dealer network is becoming, in our conversations, on one of the things that like I would think you would need to understand in basically every industry in
Yeah,
order to really fully understand it. Because if you can find a way around it, man, you've got opportunity on your hands. And I don't think anybody thought that there was a way to do that before Tesla came along with cars, right? That this was just a like this the dealers are your channel. That's how it's going to work. So I just want to go into some of the details here, and then Naman, I'll let you kind of take over and talk about this analysis. But as we're walking through the details, if I were tasked with this, and that's very possible that Bain, McKinsey, Deloitte, BCG, right, were some of the folks in this conversation trying to help them assess this. What are the things that I would have done? Number one, I would have tried to understand market demand. And like you said, right, you can now search for market demand on ChatGPT and it seems like it's efficient and it comes up. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for micro market demand by region, by month. I'm looking for it in a way that I could actually plan my production against. So that kind of information can be aided by information that comes from ChatGPT, but I have to trust it entirely. So I'm going to have to verify it in the market anyhow. It's an industry that will be shortcut, but will not go away based on AI. Second, I would have had to understand what my switching costs would be, both into this and also back out of it. So I would have had to really understand on the ground. And you'd be astonished. Companies can spend money without actually understanding costs. And I just want to poke on that for a quick second. Like, I can write a check for a $4 billion initiative to write a new program for something and still not understand how much it costs because I don't necessarily always verify these receipts against this amount. This person could have been doing 6 things, including this, right? So actually understanding the real costs is something that is it's an inefficient use of standard company time that is often done by consultants or by outside advisors when they're trying to assess a pivot point in a decision. Because it's not normally going to be efficient for you, Namaan, to look at our 3 lines of business that management consulted and to report every week on exactly what you did for each line of business, right? Like, I know how much we spent on you, but I don't know how much we spent on corporate training, for example. And so that's a very normal thing that I also would have had to do. So just to kind of dive into this, right? Canceling plans to develop a full-size electric Ram 1500, citing the slow demand as demand for full-size battery electric trucks slows in North America. By the way, I don't know that based on what you said earlier, that that's even the right way to think about it. I'm not sure it was ever there. I think it's just that it didn't materialize in the way that a curve 5 years ago looked like it was going to go up and to the right. There's a difference between slowing demand and demand that didn't materialize. And
It
because
just
this was
never
so
existed
far
in the
out,
first place.
it never
Yeah.
existed. It was a phantom demand that never existed that they were manufacturing toward for hype, which was potentially reading the tea leaves and not the actual customer information. I haven't talked to a lot of truck owners that are like, you know what I'd love is an EV. But also I think they're starting to see like there is still an ownership cost, right? It used to feel like EVs were like solar. Like if I just install solar, I have free power, right? And then like solar kind of had this rude awakening where it was like, actually, I don't get free power. I get maybe discounted power. That power costs me a $30,000 investment up front. I have to either finance that or pay for it. What else could I spend $30,000 on?
Mhm.
Like, I've seen that same trend with solar as well, where the idea of it, the sales pitch of it is like you get free power. And when you have a $500 power bill a month, that seems like a really good prospect. And I think that's like where a lot of the difference between fuel owners for EVs and fuel and buyers for EV trucks might have fallen through the cracks, right? Because the idea of free gas sounds great. But when it actually comes to changes in performance, having to charge my vehicle and having to pay for that charge, all of a sudden it doesn't seem like a great prospect.
Yeah, well, what you've been talking about in terms of what you'd look at, I 100% agree with. Like, number one, you gotta go size the market. You gotta look at the growth trends. You gotta figure out what's the actual demand. I think a subset of that is who are the customers who are driving that demand. And one thing we haven't touched on today is like I would assume that Ram's core consumer cares the least about electric vehicles out of any kind of customer segment. Because like they are interested in utility, they're not interested in environmental impact as much. They're not interested in like my guess is being trendy as much, right? Like it's like I need something that'll get the job done. That's it. That's what I care about, and I'm willing to pay for that. Like I'm
I got to
not
be able to
willing to
haul stuff and put people in it, right?
100%.
Like, yeah, all these
100%,
things.
right? So like, and I would venture to say, and write me and yell at me if I'm wrong, but if you're buying a Rivian, like you're not the core customer here, because you're buying that as a commuter vehicle. It's a commuter truck. It's not actually like a work truck,
You're wearing
right? Like I
Skechers, not work boots in a Rivian, right?
100%,
Like,
100%.
yeah.
And so like I think the it's not just overall demand, it's who is like the actual customer that I'm serving here, and is this going to make the premium price tag worth it for them? Like, and Ram is a premium price point. It is a well-known brand. It's a point of pride for people. Like you work and save and trade up for a Ram. And so, like, I think a lot of this was also just brand dilution. Is like, okay, now we've jumped on the bandwagon of electric vehicles and we're just following the trend, and the core customers, like, what I actually care about is like towing capacity. What I actually care about is um space inside of the truck bed. What I actually care about is torque. What I care about is this, right? I think there's a fundamental mismatch between how Dodge and Stellantis were looking to sell the Ram versus what the core customer cares about. That's my thesis. I'd want to go confirm that. But I think a part of market research isn't just what's happening overall in the market, but what's my core customer saying that's actually driving the demand that I think is there.
When I was in politics, one of the things that I often said was, hey, I really value CEOs who get out of the corner suite and go talk to the customer, because I think sometimes what your market research firm even gives you is not what the core customer is saying. And that was one of the things that we did really well at Bain, was we actually went to the core consumer. I mean, I went to Universal Studios and stood in line in roller coasters and talked to people who were visiting there to try to figure out what some of the plans that we were thinking about would whether they would land on the ground. And sometimes you can't do it based on response rates, because the people who are responding to that survey are not my husband, right, who is the Ram customer. And so you have to make sure that you're actually talking to, like you said, the people who matter to your business. And so getting out of the corner office and onto the street is one of the main ways that you need to understand this. But the change came as Ram CEO, who unretired from the automaker last year, has launched an aggressive turnaround for the embattled brand. I think you all just also need to understand the context for this. Like, Stellantis is in a battle for survival. Like, this is not just kind of an elective decision that's kind of an asterisk. This was a core question of, like, do we have to do EVs to survive? And so their answer to the market on this news broke late Friday was actually, no, we don't have to do electric vehicles. We will compete in what we would call our core business. And if you've never read Profit from the Core, it was one of the first business books that I read as a young professional. I think it is one of the best business books that I read, because it talked about how companies chase new things instead of doubling down on investments in their core strong business. I certainly have been guilty of that myself. There are many CEOs that have been guilty of that, but I think this is a great example of that. They're basically identifying that their core business is hardcore performance trucks. That's what they're going to do. And they're going to focus on a new product that's not really that new. It's just adding that one piece, which is fuel efficiency, to an already core performance product. And that's really, the answer, which seems obvious when you kind of put it that way. But when you're laying all those future options out, it's not as obvious, because you can chase profit and people do want electric trucks. What this isn't saying is that no one wants an electric truck. What it's saying is that we have found a way to focus on what we are good at and deliver that to the market, and let other people take the electric truck business, which was ultimately, when you break out all of the revenues and all the costs, an unprofitable exercise. Here's the thing, right? When you're looking at a business like this in a business decision, recognize that it is not simple. It's not easy for them to make it, and it's not obvious. This is a decision that they made. It's a decision that came with a lot of thought, but there were also data points and other pieces of a decision that went the other direction. This is one of the main things that we do in our corporate training, is that we identify that we actually have found challenges inside businesses where they don't tell people what to do, because they tell them there are multiple things you can do. And I just want to let you know, as you are advising senior people, no one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear, here are 3 options. Everyone wants to hear, this is what you should do, and here's why. They want you to go through the 3 options. They want you to pick one and defend it. And that's what's really going to make you an effective communicator, an effective salesperson if you're advising other people, and ultimately an effective leader if you're able to draw those kind of insights out of your people. Well, happy Monday to all of y'all. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.